Hello all and welcome to Shatter Our Souls with Novari. Now today we are focusing in exclusively on the Korok Blessing Shrines of Breath of the Wild. And there's a couple things I want to bring up right away here. First and foremost, three of the four shrines fall into a pattern of the Triforce. And to state this, actually give me a moment here.
Link, you are our final hope. The fate of Hyrule rests with you.
Who is that? Did I doze off again? Well. It's you. You finally decided to return. Better late than never. After 100 years, I'd nearly given up hope on seeing you again. Even my patience has limits, you know. That look on your face tells me that you have no recollection of me, however. I have watched over Hyrule since time immemorial. Many have referred to me over the ages as the Deku Tree. That is the weapon created by the ancient goddess. The sword that seals the darkness that only the chosen knight can wield against the Calamity Ganon. Believe it or not, it was actually you who wielded that sword 100 years ago. But I must warn you to take extreme caution. The sword stands as a test to anyone who would dare attempt to possess it. As you are now, I cannot say whether you are worthy or not. If you sought to free the sword in any sort of weakened state, you would surely lose your life where you stand. Best of luck, young one.
Anywho, the point I'm getting at is that these three shrines each are part of the Triforce, if you will. They are symbolically tied to them. We have in the Triforce power, wisdom, and courage. These are the virtues attached to each individual piece as depicted by the goddesses that created them. And it just so happens that the Koroks opted in a way to devise challenges that would effectively test whether an individual was ready to wield the Master Sword. And in their mind, balance was likely what was the best approach to becoming the goddess's chosen hero. And thus, we have currently the test of courage. Now, this is one that I think is actually really telling, because the test of courage is more than a test for you. Mr. Korok here, okay, he's absolutely terrified out of his wits right now. And the goal of this shrine is not a test of Link's capability. I think that's something that we often forget, is that these shrines are often there not for us, are often there for Link as a character, to become stronger, to test his limitations. This one, however, We have to get Okai, or Oki. I think Oki is the right way. From A to B. Oki has to get to the shrine without ever knowing that the hero himself is following. Now, I love this general premise because for me, when I made this first journey, the first pilgrimage a few years ago, I was looking at it through the lens of just going through the motions. It's a stealth mission. We'll play Assassin's Creed for about 20 minutes and off you go to the races, right? That's it. That's all there is to this shrine. And yet, that's not at all what this shrine was actually aiming for. It is, you are overseeing Oki's pilgrimage, if you will. You're overseeing it to ensure the individual tests their courage. And I think it's actually a really good full circle moment for Link because Link doesn't have to remember courage per se. It's not something that can ever truly be forgotten. But this idea of being able to test oneself, test whether you have the capability to do what needs to be done, has always been this underlying facet to Link. He's never the character that... how do I want to word this? He is the type of character who always goes forward despite potentially overwhelming odds. Link is known for this. And so, the test was never for him. The test is for Oki. Oki needs to be able to get from A to B on his own, or at least believes to be. You're only there as a guiding hand and a protector should anything truly go wrong. And I think that's a good thing. There is, however, one thing I will mention. There is a couple odd spots in here that are meant to catch the player off guard. One being a tree branch falling on top of Oki's head, which makes him stop and stumble for a moment. One is a wolf. And so there are a couple different circumstances where Oki will stop and backtrack. Yes, this is a stealth mission, that's what this is intended to be. You don't want to be spotted. But at the same time, it's very difficult to actually go through this in one go. The second shrine is unfortunately the only one that I can't do in this run, as it is a weaponless challenge, and that is the Test of Wood. The Test of Wood, for all intents and purposes, is a test of power. It is acknowledging Link's raw strength, his capability of getting from A to B in a way that is concise. And the Test of Wood is meant to challenge him because he is using a material and a weapon set that is not as physically strong as some other weapon sets are. To go all out and attack all enemies will end up with the player ending up with broken weapons. So that won't work. So what other option do you have? You have access to a bow, a shield, and a sword. Any item breaks or is dropped, and you lose. You can use any kind of arrow that you want. You can do whatever you want to make this happen, but those specific tools must be used to make it happen. And so we end up with what is effectively a test, the Test of Wood, a test of power, a test to go through and fight your way through hordes of enemies without any major issues coming up. That's great, right? And to an extent it is. The test of power, or in this case the test of wood, is meant to be more of a test of restraint. See, likewise when we're talking about how this is not Link's journey through the woods with Oki, it's Oki's journey through the woods with Link as the background. So too we have this test of restraint. Understanding which enemies can be fought, which enemies can be fought without causing any major backlash for the player. What enemies can be fought without destroying your weapons or getting hit by a stray flaming arrow that will destroy your shield. Taking off the gear is just as detrimental as effectively destroying it. So you're left with a very, very linear path where most players, myself included, will use stuff like bombs to fight the enemies. Because at least with bombs, you end up in the circumstance where you're not using the weapons and you can slowly but surely whittle down enemies over time. But this test of restraint is meant to showcase that you don't necessarily need to be the most powerful being out there to get what it is you're aiming for. Power is not the only solution. And yet, it is framed as a combat test. The third test is the test of second sight. This is supposed to be the test of wisdom, and is, admittedly, by far, the weakest of the three Korok shrines. And this is because, ultimately, these three shrines have a little bit of a thematic side to them that makes them more unique than most others. So, the reason I bring up this third one as the test of wisdom or the test of knowledge is that the test of second sight is meant for you to follow a trail of magnetically charged iron boulders to get to a series of small segmented puzzles. It's pretty mundane by the end of it. And the goal of this particular shrine is that you, the player, unless you are aware of what you're aiming for, unless you actually pick up that it is the test of second sight, you might not be able to actually get the pathway that they are aiming for you to follow. Of course, simply by picking your magnesis route and being able to see magnetic objects makes it a relatively simple test overall. But the issue is that knowing and actually being able to act on the solution itself makes the puzzle and the challenge not much of a challenge to begin with. The test of second sight is purposeful in its design. I'm sorry, what? The blood moon? No. I can't have a blood moon in the middle of a challenge. I do not want to end up losing all the progress. It's already been 15 minutes trying to get through Oki's shrine. No. Okay. Okay, cool. Oki is still A-okay. Which means we just have to finish this run and we're good, right? Anyways, let me know if this trilogy of shrines has ever dawned on anyone else as potentially representing the Triforce. Because, I'll be honest, I've never really seen anybody talk about the Korok shrines in any notable capacity beyond just that they existed. That it was a challenge to find them or get to them to begin with. But beyond that, it's pretty simplistic or whatnot to actually complete each of them once you understand what it is that they are trying to each accomplish. Speaking of trying to accomplish, Oki's shrine here is admittedly kind of slow going. I, unfortunately, am very terrible at Metal Gear Solid, and if I was in Snake's situation, I would probably have doomed the world 7 times over by this point. But, be that as it may, I want to talk a little bit on why this challenge is, I suppose, considered as unique as it is. Generally speaking, Link is a Swiss Army knife. And the reality of him being a Swiss Army knife is that virtually anything can be used to your advantage to make sure that Link gets wherever he needs to go. And so, generally, there are about 3 separate solutions when it comes to combat. There is the arrow solution, where you tackle each opponent at a distance and hope that it all works out. There is the brawler solution, where you effectively fight them head on. And you have your oddball in-between solutions, where you're using tools, items, etc. to weed out your enemies slowly but surely to get to the end result you're aiming for. It's this third solution that doesn't get enough attention in Breath of the Wild. Tears of the Kingdom absolutely gets it in spades, but Tears of the Kingdom ends up using them in perhaps a little bit too religiously. I found that I didn't use traditional combat in Tears of the Kingdom virtually at all. Whereas Breath of the Wild, traditional combat became second nature because of how direct it was in its approach to making sure that the player had it. Now, the reason I want to bring that up is because theoretically, each and every one of the trials, shrines, combat encounters are dependent almost entirely on whether or not you, the player, have the skill and the gear to be able to complete each challenge within a reasonable span of time. And that's really good, right? We want to be able to accomplish it within a reasonable span of time. We want each of our trials and challenges to go and work in a way that makes sense. But Breath of the Wild's, I suppose, everything is against players going for the lesser paths. Typically, I suppose you'd call it the Sheikah Slate, or Pura Pad, depending on which version of the game you're playing. The Sheikah Slate really leaves a lot to be desired in terms of its utility in various situations. This is partially because the Sheikah Slate, for all it's good, for all it does that is proper, it struggles when it comes to dealing out damage. There are technically 3 to 4 damage dealing runes in general. You have the bombs, magnesis, as well as you have the stasis rune. Stasis does not do damage on its own. Magnesis does not do damage on its or without something heavy, like a boulder. And bombs, while incredibly powerful, also leave a lot to be desired. So between those 3 very segmented approaches, you effectively have 3 options in terms of combat. 2, really, if you want to get semantic about it. And that's a really big problem to have, because if you only have 2 solutions, you better hope they're both really good solutions. Bombs generally work okay. I wouldn't say they're perfect by any means, but they're definitely serviceable. They make the average everyday runabouts make more sense. And while there are a couple of moments where a wind bomb or two launching Link across all of Hyrule definitely makes sense and is definitely useful, it doesn't end up being useful in my hands. To be clear, I have never pulled off the wind bomb glitch ever. Second, magnesis only works with big heavy objects, as I specified prior, which means unless you are taking a boulder with you everywhere, you really don't have all that many options to go with. Speaking of, I'm going to have to go back to see if I can complete the trial to get to Varidania, albeit at this point I question whether I'll be able to actually complete the shrine. Anywho, we're on our way to the Test of Wood, specifically because I wanted to be doubly sure that I couldn't complete it, even if it was just me running past a barrier of sorts. And so, the following footage is going to be my admittedly lackluster attempt at throwing my head against a brick wall, hoping to see a crack. Unfortunately, my entire attempt at finding a crack in this brick wall did not turn up with any good evidence. But, hey, you gotta test it, you gotta see, because you never know what you're gonna come across. So, enjoy me throwing myself at this for a couple of moments here. So, as I was kind of stating, the various shrines often have one solution in mind. And while 95% of all shrines are completable as long as you have the right gear, the fact that some shrines do require a sword, a bow, or something of that nature means that there's really not a whole lot of room for error if anything ever goes sideways. So, Test of Wood. We walk past the barricade. 3, 2, 1. I'm not allowed to have weapons, therefore I must take everything off. So, we're just going to take off the bow. And we're going to drop the sword and the shield. And all done. Disqualified. I lose. And so there goes the very first potential. I figured that maybe I'd be able to jump over the barricade. Because no big deal, right? I can try again as many times as I need to. But just running through ain't gonna make any difference because if I don't have any gear, I can't take on the trial. Running past, there is effectively an invisible wall, a checkpoint if you will. And because I need to go past said checkpoint, it's kind of difficult to really get much done if I have to use the checkpoint. So we just jump backwards over the fence, and hey, you can't go past. Which means simply jumping over the barricade will not do the trick. We need something a little more potent. And so, my next thought was, well, if I can't just jump over it, how low to the ground is it? Let's see if I can float over it. And you'll see me attempt to climb over top, except I can't climb past on top of the pathway above. Therefore, we need to fly through the middle. Ultimately, this is just a large block in the way, and pretty much the only way to get through that might pose some form of evidence or positive would be a wind bomb. but only if it can launch me high enough to be above the trial to begin with. Effectively, a lot of people do the wind bomb glitch, or oversight if you will, and can launch themselves into the Great Forest, or the woodland, with enough force that the fog doesn't hit. Anywho, we're just gonna stop for a moment because I have 7 spiritual orbs and I am gonna spend them. Because at this point, I'm pretty sure I have enough hearts to get the Master Sword. But I'm only pulling the Master Sword on the absolute necessity if I need it to fight the final boss. And to be honest, I don't think I need it. I think I can get through it without the requirement of the Master Sword. I can't necessarily say the same thing about the Bow of Light or some form of shield. Don't get me wrong, I'd love to have something a little more specific, but be that as it may. The third trial, as I said, is the Test of Second Sight. So, the trial is effectively avoiding getting lost in the mist. And that's a lovely side effect of this. To get into the forest, you effectively need to watch the wind and use sparks from a torch to get you from point A to point B. The Trial of Second Sight, there are a number of boulders trapped within the mouths of the ogre trees, as they call it. And these boulders are effectively your means of keeping track of where you are and where you've been, as specified earlier, which makes this a really, really easy shrine because we already know how to go through it. To go about it without prior knowledge is a tad bit more difficult. Anywho, knowing what we know and how to get through this trial means this will be an absolute cakewalk. Ow. Okay. So we need a little bit of aggressive reprogramming on this particular Skelly Boy. So the nice thing about these Skelly Boys is if you detach the head from their shoulders, you can effectively take the head wherever you want to go. And while I'm sure that our dear friend there would be more than happy taking a swim with us, I don't really think it's necessary to be running around with it with a head all the time. Oh. Cool. So, feed it the shield. Got it. Before that, let's just do a little bit of reprogramming. Okay, one of the heads blew up. And the other one is running away. Alright, so we'll just take the head and just like this. Anybody know how to play soccer? I'm pretty sure I'm doing it wrong. Okay, one down, one to go. I personally like the stout enemies in Breath of the Wild. I like how vulnerable they are, if that makes any sense at all. A unarmored enemy that is intended to have one weakness in the form of its head means that the player really has all sorts of options when it comes to dealing with them. They're meant to be pretty simplistic, open-ended challenges, if you will. And so, on its own, that's not a huge issue. You knock an enemy down, and off you go. The challenge is dealing with the head, which has to be detached and then fought separately to be able to make it more reasonable. And that in and of itself isn't really all that bad of a circumstance when you get right down to it. Unfortunately, I also don't know how to use the Cryonis room with any degree of efficiency, so bear with me for a moment as we cross the lake. As I said, this isn't necessarily a hard challenge, more time-consuming than anything. Hey, why did the Shield Eater brother steal your chest? I'll get it right for you. Just give me a moment. Anywho, these 3 blessing shrines really encapsulate what it is that I believe the peak design of these shrines can be. I don't believe that the blessing shrines are necessarily the best out there. Quite the contrary, I feel like the blessing shrines are some of the weaker ones, ordinarily. But the Korok blessing shrines are notably better thematically than a lot of other shrines out there. It just so happens that they're all around a singular location and are tied to one another through both theming and location, making them easy to tie together. Anyway, we're gonna get to the Kun Sidaj Shrine, and then we are going to head north to the Tiflo Ruins, or Typhlo Ruins, depending on which pronunciation you prefer. The reason being is I've still got time, and I want to finish off the woodland region of Breath of the Wild in one fell swoop. So, we're just gonna go around the entire forest here, take a little bit of a detour, and I'll be right back. Oh, lovely weather we're having. It'd be a shame if somebody did anything to it. But the Tiflo Ruins, or Typhlo Ruins, depending on your pronunciation, is another one of those rather unique shrines that I wish there was more of. It's more about environmental understanding than I think a lot of the shrines out there are. And kind of to iterate my point of it being about environmental understanding. You have some shrines like the Thundara Plateau, wherein you have to try and get a series of orbs to a central location. And you have other locations that are, an example being making your way through a maze, or finding a series of Hynoxes and defeating them. Each of these solutions, or each of these puzzles on their own, is relatively straightforward. There's nothing stopping the player from accomplishing their goals in these admittedly common, but short circumstances on the overworld. And you have regions like this. The ruins here are completely shrouded in darkness. And this is a good thing, as it means that the trial itself is about navigation more than it is about transportation. It is less about combat, less about puzzle solving than it is about just trying to find your way through this mess to begin with. The ruins, unfortunately, got a version in Tears of the Kingdom that lacks the darkness, and so I ended up finding my way through the ruins in Tears of the Kingdom and finding a solution that was admittedly a little bit short-sighted of me. Pun intended. And this solution is as follows. We have to find the shrine hidden within the dark ruins, and to get to the shrine we need one of the Sheikah orbs, as well as the location it ends up going to. The Sheikah orb is around the neck of a Hynox, deep within these ruins, and that's about all we get for solutions to the problem. So we're just going to head forward here. And when you hit your first wall, instead of turning around, I want you to continue running straight. Oh, treasure chest. I don't mind if I do. Some opal. That's going to be good for some money down the line. All right. As soon as you hit the wall, start climbing. When you get to the top of the wall, climb the next one. And continue to do so until you hit the top. Assuming you hit the top properly, you should see an orange glow over the horizon. This is one of two locations. This is either the Hinox's necklace, or it is the shrine's entrance, so to speak. The shrine entrance is the one we don't want to see first, but nonetheless, we are going to need to worry about. So, we're just going to head up to Old Man Hinox here, and hopefully not give him a rude wake-up call, because that's going to make things a lot harder. Okay, so we have some feet, I think. We're just going to go around him. Stealthy more than anything at the moment. I just need you to put down your arm or something so I have something to climb on. And we'll be all good, right? Theoretically, when doing these shrines where you have to get a orb off of a Hinox, it is possible to just get it off of them by climbing the Hinox and running away with the orb. However, this is something that I generally dislike doing, because I often find that these trials are best suited to combat. At least for me. I've always enjoyed fighting monsters and whatnot, so it always made sense to me to use those types of tools to solve said problem. Anyways, we have to run past the same Hinox again and see what happens. I have every faith that it's gonna go just swimmingly. And once again, another blessing shrine. Oh, he woke up. Okay. I don't know if he can see in the dark, but I would rather not test it. Oh, it's a torch. I don't want that either. Gross. Yeah. I don't like torches, I don't like bows, I don't like shields. Just don't give them to me. That's not okay. Weapons are bad, people. Anywho, the Kuto-Wawe Shrine? We head back into the bottom, which is, of course, yet another blessing shrine. Who's surprised? We collect the last couple bits of the items, the ancient core, and we have one other shrine that is technically within the Woodland region. This is a shrine that I personally find funny more than anything. And it is the Forgotten Shrine, or Forgotten Temple Shrine. Now, the Forgotten Temple is an area that I believe is referenced in Skyward Sword as effectively the Forgotten Grounds, wherein you have the Temple of Time and whatnot involved within the Faerun province of Skyward Sword. It's where I think it is. But I'll be honest, I don't actually know, because it has been such a significant span of time since I've actually played, and I'll be honest, there's probably some piece of lore that I'm missing around the Forgotten Shrine to begin with. Oh, no, 2 shrines left. Hoofty. I'm losing my mind. Anywho, This shrine, I will be completely honest, at this point I've completely forgotten what's in it. And I think that's a good thing, as it means we're going into this blind together. Anywho. Do-do-do-do-do-do-do. The Monya Toma Shrine. Who doesn't like a little bit of Monya every now and again? Oh, right. The Drawing Parabolas Shrine. This shrine takes advantage of what is effectively just the game's basic physics engine at work. The goal of the shrine is simple. You get launched stuff from point A to point B, and when you get launched, you end up going to what is effectively the end of the shrine in and of itself. The solution? Hit a switch. 3 times. Because once is just not enough. So, shrine bonk 2. And then switch bonk number 3. Not sure why I'm taking so long to do it. And theoretically, where did the ball go? Please don't tell me it launched. Oh, there it is. No big deal. So, we just gotta get the ball, start it on its path, along with, looks like a ball, because we also gotta take care of a couple of crates. No big deal. Easy, everyday type of shrine. We're just gonna enjoy watching the blue orb and the orange orb make their travels around this entire shrine, because why not? Orb 1 has made it to its final destination. If you've ever watched that movie, I am so sorry for you. That's a lot of trauma. And Orange Orb is at its destination. So, easy. And then we're gonna go into challenge the next shrine, which is the Shrine of the Forgotten Temple. There we go. So anyways, as I was saying, this temple, I believe, existed within Skyward Sword, but got buried over a millennia because that's what things do. It slowly builds up sediment, and the geography of Hyrule has been anything but consistent over the last 30 years. What I like about this temple, in its absolute base form, is that it is meant to be a temple of, well, it's about another test of courage. You, as a player, have likely come across multiple Guardians, Guardian Scouts, and decayed Guardians, the ones that can't move. And these guys are absolutely terrifying. Because of course they are. Why wouldn't a bunch of Guardians aiming directly at Link at all times be terrifying? But the challenge is about getting in here without being hit. Once you can get into the shrine, you can theoretically teleport out. Half the job, or the battle, is just getting into this place, right? Got a nice large goddess statue at the end. You can heal up. You can complete whatever challenge you have. If you have multiple shields, you can send all their lasers back at them. It's great. It's the perfect shrine for an individual who wants to test courage. Do I think that it's the smart thing? Absolutely not. But it is the perfect test of one's courage, one's ability to step out there and do the one thing that scares you. I love that about this particular shrine. But as an individual who's fiddled around with these Guardians for as long as I have, I instead have a proposition. I am going to find a way to get out of the temple without getting hit by the Guardians, while also trying not to be... I'm going to get out of here without getting hit by the Guardians. without teleporting, to be clear. Teleportation, while it is incredibly useful, is just not my style. And so I'm going to use a bit more, shall we say, unfavored solutions to get out of this mess. First and foremost, a dance with the very devils themselves, the Guardians. Now, I know that the best way to get away from them is to get up high. High elevation means we have ourselves the paraglider. Paraglider means better movement, which also means that if they do manage to land or fire a beam, I'm not totally helpless. Ow. Oh. Well, would you look at that? I did get hit. Well, that's just not okay. Bunch of jerks making me lie to an entire group of people. Anyway, the goal from here on is to escape without getting in any major trouble. First problem, I need to get to the wind gust. Now, the wind gust is actually not all that bad to get to. It's just a matter of getting onto the left or right edge. Get to that edge, and everything else kind of falls into place quite quickly. So, we'll just run around here, take a couple dips, dives, ducks, and dodges. Yeah, nobody's noticing me, that's good. And we should be in the clear. And the lovely part about this is the Guardians really don't know what to do when looking at you from behind. Because they don't really have a whole lot of... how do I want to word this? They'll turn if they know where you are. But they're programmed to look towards the entrance. Meaning it is more of a test coming in than it is a test leaving. Which is good for me, because it means I can do stuff like this. Haha! Anyways, if you like what you see, are curious where we're headed next, or want to see me tackle the entire Hebra region of Hyrule next time on, I suppose, Zelda Day, whatever day that ends up being, drop a like, leave subscribe, and we'll catch you next time. Until then, have a good one.